Hey everybody, welcome to this third video for the first module. In this video, I just want to talk about the lab equipment that we will have in our room. So with that, I'll share my screen here. All right, so here's just a picture of one of the benches in our lab. I think we have maybe about 12 or so of these setups. So we have a PC and most of them have oscilloscopes and they are mostly two-channel. You might have some four-channel floating around in there. There are a few multimeters, I think. Yeah, so we've got one Agilent here and a Fluke up here and a function generator. All the benches should have a function generator, a source meter, which I don't think we'll be using. Um, that's sometimes used in the semiconductor classes here. We've got a DC power supply. Oh, actually, we've got three different DC power supplies. We've got an Agilent one, Rigol, and this Topward Electric Instruments. So that is kind of like the normal bench setup. And sometimes we'll have little bags of short leads here. But the room is also equipped with this wall of cables. These are located in the back corner, right? So here's a door in the back. This is facing the rec center. And just to the left of the door is this wall of cables. So we've got two different kind of terminals for the cables. We've got these coaxial BNC so they're BNC cables, and inside is coax. And so these are good for high frequency signals. I don't think we'll be working too much with them. We'll mostly be working with these banana cables. And here we can see the little banana jacks on the end. But on this side, on the right side here, we have some banana to grabber. And what the grabber cable termination looks like is kind of like there's a little area that you can push up and it will expose a copper wire, uh, kind of like hook, which then allows you to hook onto the circuit that you want to analyze. So we'll get into that more when we get into lab. But that's just kind of what this bench setup is. And for the first experiment, we're going to be I think we're only going to be using the multimeter. And so here's one of them and a power supply. I think your best bet would be to use this Rigol one. It might be the easiest to set up. But just taking a look at the multimeter. So we've got a ohm meter here. If we click on the omega symbol, and you'll notice that we've got a bunch of input jacks here. So when we're using the ohm meter, we want to use this input on the top right that has a little ohm symbol. And I think you can use either of these grounds. I think your best bet would just to use this one since it's closest to that terminal. But if we have a resistor, what we would do is we would connect the input and then connect the ground right across that resistance. And what happens is this ohm meter will display something on the screen, maybe like 100.01 ohms or something along the lines of that. Once we select this ohm button. So so this is a multimeter, which means that it can measure a bunch of different things. So maybe say we come over here and with our DC power supply, we connect up our circuit. Right, and we click on, when the channel is turned on, right, there's a little on and off button. So you kind of just click on this, turn the channel on. But what you want to do first is select the channel and then configure it, right? So you can set it into constant voltage or constant current. I think we're going to be using both of these functions here. And you can also set some over voltage protection and over current protection. But I don't think we'll need to do that quite yet. So you want to maybe click on the voltage setting, and then you can punch in how many volts you want and click this up arrow to indicate volts, I think. And then when you want to toggle the channel on and off, this channel will highlight bright green if it's on, just to indicate that your circuit is live. So let's just say that we apply 5 volts here. It'll come out somewhere like that. So we're setting up 5 volts across this resistor. And if we wanted to measure the voltage, right, we would click on volts, and we would use this top right channel again and one of these grounds, and we would wire it up. So let's use maybe blue. Wire it up here and wired it up down here. And that will measure the voltage across that resistor. So schematically speaking, you're just taking a look at the schematic of this. We have our voltage source, we have our resistor, and we want to set up a voltmeter in parallel. Right, so if you got anything from that circuit theory video, is I want you to understand that when we're measuring voltage, we want to hook up our voltmeter in parallel, but when we're measuring current, we need to hook up the ammeter in series. So what is that going to look like? Well, coming out of well, it doesn't really matter where you put the ammeter exactly, but at some point, one of the terminals is going to have to connect back up to the voltage source, right? So the power supply here. So let's just say instead of voltage here, we want to measure the current. We take off these wires. We take a look at our multimeter. And what we want to do, you can see that it's in this gray option up here. So we have to click on this shift key first and then press on the DCV button. And looking back at this input panel, we have to connect positive N here and ground here. So if we want to connect the ammeter, let's just take off the voltage source, the voltmeter here. If we wanted to connect the ammeter as done in this schematic, well, we would need to take the power supply, and instead of tying the positive end to the resistor, we tie the positive end into the ammeter, and then we take the ground wire from the ammeter and tie this into the resistor. And so now we're measuring the current that is going through there. And you can see that the bottom terminal, the resistor here, is appropriately tied back to the ground or the negative end of this DC power supply. And just as a reminder, whenever we're connecting up the circuit, we want to make sure that this power supply is turned off, right, just for safety reasons so that you don't shock yourself. So once it's connected properly and you're convinced that you've done it correctly, you can go ahead and turn on the power supply. Make sure that if you're using it as an ammeter, that you select the ammeter function first, right? You don't want to be trying to measure voltage. Kind of like if you were to put the voltmeter here instead of the ammeter, well, that's just going to be a short, right? There's no voltage on that wire. And I don't think the equipment will be damaged, but it'll give you the incorrect measurements. And I think that's all I really wanted to talk about the multimeter and the power supply is just make sure when you're measuring voltage that we connect the voltmeter in parallel with the element that you want to look at. I guess the ohmmeter, call it O, right, when we're measuring the resistance, it doesn't matter too much because resistors are not polarized, so it doesn't really matter. But if you get a negative value on your voltmeter or ammeter, well, the voltage is just flipped around or the current is going the opposite direction. And that concludes, yeah, that concludes this discussion. I do have breadboards and resistors also in the lab, but I think we'll save that for another video. Thanks for tuning in. See you guys in the next one.